we are starting to see a leveling off in prices. But again, that doesn't tell the whole story because there are still neighborhoods, and it really is neighborhood by neighborhood in Davidson and Williamson County when we're looking at numbers. All right, so wanted to do another market update. We're still doing some remodeling, so that's why there's a random rug on the wall over there. It never ends. But wanted to look at the January numbers and see what prices are doing and all that good stuff as we stay on top of the Nashville market. So, okay, so the big thing I still want to emphasize is that it really is neighborhood by neighborhood in Davidson and Williamson County when we're looking at numbers. And so we're going to do some big brush strokes, but when you are looking at particular areas, it's going to be very important to look at those specifically if you're thinking about making an offer or something like that. But let's just look at some overall trends. It will give us an idea of what the market as a whole is doing. So this is median sales price for single family homes in Davidson County. There are some peaks and valleys with seasonality. So in January of 2025, we closed out at $499,000 for the median sales price, which is pretty crazy, y'all, but it's only up 1%. So we're pretty flat over last year. I'll be pretty interested to see what February numbers come out as, we're a little bit higher, but what's kind of interesting is that the average sales price is pretty much dead even. So we are starting to see a little bit of a tempered growth in pricing year over year, at least right now, factoring in seasonality. And then let's look at some new listing data. So in January 2024, we had 1,158 new listings, and this year we had 1,182, just 24 new listings, more than last year. So pretty much dead on with inventory. You see, we had a huge drop in December. I barely saw any new listings come up. A lot of these were also just a delist and relist situation. These are amount of homes that went under contract in the month of January. So in January, we had 653 homes that went under contract. In January of last year, we had 620. So barely a bump, pretty flat as well. Demand has stayed relatively low on par with last year. And you can see December was way down. So we had 439 closings in December. Yeah, so December of 24, 439. We had 517 in December of 23. So when we're factoring seasonality, you can see that we are pretty flat. And it's crazy that we've been flat for almost 2 years. Now we were down over 23 to 24. And then our closings. So again, we're going to see a lot of seasonality in this graph, but January of 2024, we had 457 closings. And in 25, we had 453, pretty much dead even. And our closings were down from December. December was actually, this is kind of crazy, and I don't know why, but December, maybe the change of office, who knows? But December was a very busy month for a lot of people. We had a lot of closings in December. It was, I think, very out of season, but we saw a nice little bump, especially with how the whole year had been. We did see a big decrease from December to January, which means there weren't, kind of going back to what we just looked at, there weren't a lot of new under contract homes in December. So that didn't carry over and close out in January. This is something that has been pretty interesting tracking, but these are the amount of listings that were canceled. And so we're seeing canceled listings for a lot of reasons. But the primary reason is when somebody's making a significant price change. So, if somebody tried a price and then that didn't work, and maybe they did some little drops, they will delist it, wait maybe a week or a little bit more, and they will relist at a new price, maybe with some improvements. And so you're seeing a lot of cancel listings and then a lot of relists, which actually go into our new listing pool. So you're actually seeing quite a bit of like the same recycled listings, but check this out. So in January, we had 419 canceled listings. In January of last year, we had 333. And just look at the amount that canceled listings have grown. And this is just really speaking to people trying to find that balance between what the market can bear in price and then what it's going to sell at. And so I still think a lot of sellers are shooting their shot and listing pretty high for the market outside of comps. And then after a while, they're realizing, man, we actually do need to like take it off, and then we need to reevaluate our pricing strategy or our condition strategy. But typically, it's a combination of both. Now let's hop over to Williamson County. So our median sales price in Williamson in January of 24, it was 975K. And then in January 2025, it was 939. So we've actually seen a pretty significant decrease in the median sales price. The average, check this out, 1.3 in January of 2024 and 1.14 in January 2025. And that's down over December of 2024 and significantly down from January. And I say this over and over again, but Williamson County can really be skewed by a few sales because some of the large or some of the high home prices that can close out here. But we do start to see a little bit of a trend here, even with seasonality kind of baked into where I'm wondering if prices in Williamson County are really starting to settle over last year. So we've had a pretty good bump. You can see in 2022, we leveled out. 23, we saw a little bit of momentum. Early 24, it popped up, and then we've started to see kind of this leveling off here. And, it's interesting, but when we go over to market activity and look at under contracts and closings, we're starting to see kind of that same trend. Pretty much from April, we've seen this downward trend of the amount of homes sold and under contract. Now, January, we had 281 under contracts and 310 closings. In January 24, we had 248 and 263. So we were up in closings. Yeah, we're up in under contracts just a little bit from January of last year. Part of me wonders, though, if we're starting to see a softening of new builds. And it looks like new builds have stayed relatively strong. So even our closings, 89 closings of new construction in Williamson County and 7 last year, 31 under contract and 85. So that kind of bashes that theory. We're having a lot more new construction homes in Williamson County and Spring Hill and Thompson Station. So that's pretty interesting to me. Seeing a slight decrease in the average sale of new builds. We have 1.44, 1.316. Let's see what the median's done. Median's way down on that newer build too. I think we're really starting to see a pricing correction in Williamson County. So it's definitely starting to level off, which is interesting. We'll see if that trend kind of stays over the next couple months. Last thing I'd like to kind of look at is month supply of inventory. In January, we had a 4.5 month supply of inventory in Williamson County, which is pretty much on par with January of last year. And, I'll continue to say this, we're starting to see a little bit, but we're still not getting that really high buildup of inventory on the market. So I think that's why prices are staying a little bit sticky. I am pretty surprised by some of the pricing data on Williamson County, and I think it could be a touch of seasonality. We'll see, but it really is looking flat and like it started to even out as a whole. There's areas now that are still popping off. Month supply in Davidson County, 5.78 months, so almost a 6 month supply of inventory, which is the highest that we have seen. That's the highest that we've seen ever since Realtrax has had this reporting function. Check that out, y'all. The last peak was 4.95 in January 23. We're at 5.78 right now. So we are starting to see some of that buildup of inventory getting back to a more balanced market in Davidson County. I didn't do this. We should do this for Williamson too. Let's look out this far in Williamson. So yeah, we've been hovering around, depending on the season, we've kind of been hovering around this 4.5 in Williamson for a while. Yeah, for almost 2 years now. Of course, with some seasonality in there, but so what does this mean? It means that right now we are starting to see a leveling off in prices, but again, that doesn't tell the whole story because there are still neighborhoods, and maybe the next video I'll go in and we'll do some more specific neighborhoods, and I'll show you some neighborhoods that are really, really still doing well and appreciating. And there are some numbers that are correcting very heavily. And that can be very market by market. And so this again is just a generality of Davidson and Williamson County. But the promising news for you buyers out there is that prices are starting to stay consistent. And from my personal experience, I've noticed that a lot more people are willing to offer concessions. And this isn't always the case. Sellers' motivations vary. Some people will only move if they get a particular price or what they want. Some people have more flexibility and some people need to move. So I've had situations where I've been able to negotiate large concessions. I've had other ends of the spectrum where people wouldn't come off, a couple $1,000s to make a deal work. And so it really is seller by seller on what you're going to be able to negotiate. In some areas, it's easier to do than others. With that being said, I really do think we're starting to have a balanced market. This feels like real estate again. This feels like what it's like when you have buyers and sellers and you're able to negotiate to come to a common agreement. And so if you're a buyer out there still looking for those foreclosure type deals, you're probably not going to find them. Very, very, very rare and very hard to find. If you're a seller that still thinks that you can sell your house for whatever you want to without making the proper condition improvements, it's just not going to happen. You have to be realistic with your number. And I've talked to many sellers about this, and I've had to do price corrections and we've had to do delist and relist before, but there is still an expectation gap in the market. And I think we're starting to close that gap a little bit and we're starting to see that. So I do think it is a good time for real estate. I said it. I think that you can still get a house. I think that you can still sell your house for a good price and still bank on some of your appreciation. And then I think you can still go buy a house and ask for some concessions and buy down your rate. I locked somebody in at a 5.9% interest rate not too long ago with a rate buy down, which is awesome. So don't be discouraged. If you do want some advice or if you want me to look at particular numbers in your neighborhood and we can dive a little bit deeper in that, feel free to reach out. I would love to talk numbers with you and go over some more specific data. But this is what we're seeing in the market right now. We'll see what February holds. Thanks.